Hey, watercolors. Well, I haven't done a video in a while, so this is kind of unique since last semester anyway, so it's kind of fun to be back doing these. Right now, I just submitted a new or put in a new assignment for you guys called Dropping on Your Face. And well, you're going to do a couple versions of this assignment. The first one just involves dropping pigment onto the paper. The whole idea behind this is to learn different ways of applying pigment to your paper, but also removing pigment from your paper. So the dropping part is, and it's also a way to kind of help you gain some sensitivity to just how watercolor works and the differences, difference between, say, watercolor and other painting mediums. That's just an important thing to start to understand, or drawing, or whatever it is you're used to looking or working with. And one of the really important aspects of watercolor painting is its transparency, the fact that you see through it, okay? You see through the layers. That's also one of the more frustrating aspects of it. The fact that when you put something down, a color or a mark, it stains the paper. Okay, that's an important thing to understand. It's not sitting on top like if you're doing an acrylic painting or an oil painting. The layers sit on top of one another. Okay, and they're opaque. You can't see through them unless you thin them down a lot. With watercolor, you can't make watercolor, at least the type we're using. It's transparent watercolor. You can't make it opaque. It just doesn't work. So you can by just sort of gobbing it on, but then that's a waste of paint, and also looks horrible to sort of gob on lighter colors on top of darker colors. So avoid that. So that's kind of a basic idea behind transparent watercolor. And why do we paint with transparent watercolor? Why? The thing that's unique to it is first its fluidity, but also its luminosity. If you do the transparent thing right, the white of the paper kind of shines through the layers of color, creating a feeling of light and luminosity that's very unique to the medium. But it takes time to get there. So be patient with yourself. Don't worry. I always like to say that watercolor class is a class that you sit and watch water dry. So one little tip I learned last semester from one of my other students is that to open up these containers of paint that you purchase, so you can see that there's like kind of a metal cover there. The inside of the cap has a little pointy thing of each cap. Sorry about my ugly hands or fingernails or whatever. And you pop that in, and it opens up, punches a hole in it, and opens it. Isn't that cool? I was like fumbling with that for ages, and somebody said, "Hey, dude, look." So, there are opaque watercolors called gouache. You might have seen that. I can't spell it for Gouch something. Gouache. And that is a watercolor that is opaque. So, colors like your flake white or any kind of white paint in watercolor is technically a gouache, meaning it is opaque. So there's that. So dropping on your face. First thing to do is get your photo, like I printed out a photo of me. Oh, there I am, blah, 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 blah. So I have this photo. I'm going to use it as my resource. I've just scored out a few different colors, kind of random. I'm not too worried about, the colors. I just want to try to experiment with the intermingling different colors. I have some colors already on the palette that I can use if I want to. I forgot my sprayer, dang it. But because one of the other things perhaps you've noticed, and I can't remember if I mentioned this in a previous video, watercolor pigments redissolve. That's the cool thing about them. So you can just kind of have them, unlike acrylic or oil, when they're dry, these paints can be redissolved and reactivated, which is kind of cool. Okay, so I've got some colors. I've got other colors that I've just squirted out while I was chattering here. So, first thing to do is to just kind of get the paper a bit wet. So I'm going to take my mop brush, put it down. And, this is an exercise in just sort of trying to understand how water works on a surface. I've probably mentioned this in a previous video, I think. I don't know. I get these all mixed up. But my apologies if I'm repeating myself. But water sits on paper in different ways. It can, if there's like a heavy area of water, it sort of bubbles up, okay, because of water tension, it creates kind of a bubble where the edges are thinner than the center. okay? Or, like I just put water down on here, so the pigment behaves differently in those kind of circumstances. Or you can mop up the brush, I just kind of squeegeed my brush off, and I'm gonna kind of take up some of the water so it's not all bubbly like that. It's more of a dampening of the paper versus a wetting of the paper. And you can explore either, that's fine. So using my face here, my photo, I'm just gonna start working with some colors. And I'm gonna drop, not paint, okay? I'm dropping. And I'm not too worried about how accurate this is. Obviously, this is gonna, oh look, I have hair. This is going to not be a terribly accurate portrait due to the nature of the paint. I'm just, you know, kind of dropping this in. Let's get some orange in there to get a little bit fleshier. Now, one of the things that happens when you're painting with watercolor is that the white changes the pigment, okay? The white paper illuminates the paint, kind of changing its color. So I try to keep these videos as short as possible. Don't be afraid to mix color. Look, don't worry about those kind of blooms. Those are beautiful. I'm not making marks. I'm just sort of dropping the paint. I'm right now looking at the lights and darks and just kind of thinking about those. And again, if you're after accuracy, as in, you know, photo accuracy and all that, forget about it. It's not going to happen with this one. You're just exploring how pigment behaves. And as the paper dries, it'll do different things. Oops. You can add more water to thin things down a bit if you want, or to start to move the pigment around a bit more. Like I said, these will look awful. They won't look like you, and that's not the intent. The intent is to sort of make an attempt to make it look like you, kinda, but mostly just explore the way pigment works. Okay? Put some green in there, why not? That's the idea. Take your time, let it dry. I rushed this because it's just the video. So don't go a little slower than I've been doing. And then the next one, we're going to be exploring another technique called lifting. But for now, explore this dropping technique. I'm going to end it now because it's too long.